This is Substance Painter Startup Part 2. In Part 1, we got this far. We basically put two materials on here. We talked about masks, we put some dirt, a little bit of curvature effects on here, and we looked at putting a pattern on. And this is what we have. And I'd like to go on in this video and talk about drawing or painting with alphas. All right, and as you can see over here, there are a number of alphas, which are basically black and white images. Sometimes there's a little bit of blur in them. Some of these may have, but either way, we're going to use some of this to paint on our model here, on our object. Okay, so the first thing that I would like to do is I would like to create a line that's indented a little bit and black that goes all the way around here and here. All right, like an inset line. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a fill layer, and really the reason that I'm going to use a fill layer is because I'm going to be able to make changes afterwards. If I just use a paint layer, for example, with the paintbrush, and you click on that, then you go into the properties and you scroll down, you say, okay, so what do I want for this? I'm going to scroll all the way down to the channels. And you say, okay, well, I want some color. So I'm going to Alt-click color. That will select just that channel. And from there, if I say just want one more, I'm just going to click it. So that's a fast way. If I just want height, just Alt-click height. But I want color and height, let's say. And I want the height to be indented. So I'm going to pull this downwards. And the color, I want it to be black. Okay, so you've set up your layer to have a black color and a decreased height, but now you have to choose the brush that you're going to use. And I'm probably going to use the square. I double click on that and I get a nice hard brush. And there are a few parameters that you can adjust here. You can see that the alpha that I'm using is the square. If I click here, double click that, I get that one. All right, so that's the alpha I'm going to use to paint with, because that'll give me, like I said, a nice crisp line. You can adjust spacing, all of this stuff, and that's going to be important. We're going to talk about some of that, the rotation, etc. I'm going to hit the tab button. That gives me full screen, so I can get to this icon, orthographic. That's going to let me look straight on, sort of like in Blender. I'm holding the Alt button and the left mouse button to rotate, then I hold the Shift and it'll snap into position. Let's say I take this, and I'll tell you what I'm doing later on, and I do that. Well, first of all, it doesn't go all the way around. We're going to talk about that in a minute. But what if I wanted it a different color? Tab button, let's come back here. So I really didn't want it black. Now that I think about it, I want it to be red. Well, you can't change it. Okay, it's done. You've painted on the canvas and there's nothing you can do. So, I mean, paint layers are useful if you know what you want to do, or you're doing stencils, which we'll talk about in the future. But for this, I'm going to delete that layer and I'm going to use a fill layer. And here I'm going to define what I want. I don't care about any of this stuff. I'm going to Alt-click color and then click height. I'm going to lower the height around midway down. Base color, I'm going to put at black. Or close to black, and you can see that it's gone everywhere. Well, it's filled up the entire object, the entire layer, with these parameters, color and height. But what we're going to do next is we're going to add a black mask, and to that mask with it selected, I'm going to come to the magic wand here, and I'm going to add a paint layer to that. Now, we used the paint layer before, but this paint layer is associated with this black mask. And you can see now there's nothing there. So if I start to paint, let me go back to the paintbrush. I'll just make it smaller. And to make it smaller, by the way, you can see the size up here. You can either pull that, or you can hold down the Control and the right mouse button and move to the left to make it smaller, to the right to make it bigger. I'm just going to do this. I'm just going to do something here. Same kind of deal. But I can come back now to the main layer, because this was a fill layer, and I can now change the color. I can change the height. So that's the benefit of using a fill layer. The other thing is, I can just get rid of that paint layer, and let me just go back to around black, to height down there, and on the mask, just add another paint layer. Or of course you can add multiple layers, so you can change things. All right, so here I am in orthographic, and I got that by, I have to press tab because of my screen resolution. It's here, perspective view, that's just, looking at it like this, versus orthographic, snapping into position. I'm holding, again, the Alt. I'm using my left mouse button to rotate. Holding Alt and Shift snaps it into position. I want to be able to see both sides of this. So let's say I get a size that I want. Let's see, I'm just going to drag. And when I drag, I'm holding Shift and Control to constrain it. Shift and Control, click. That's about the thickness I want. It's not the position, and it's not going all the way around, and it's only on one side. So let's try something. This button here is the symmetry button. Let's click that. And the thing you need to remember about Substance Painter is the X is this way, left to right. The Y is up and down, and the Z is depth, sort of like this way, going into it. So I just clicked on the symmetry button, and here are the settings. And you can see it says mirror symmetry in the X. So if I do something here, you have to click off that. If I do something there, I get it on the other side. If this is a symmetrical object, you got to remember that. If I do it in the Y, and I do something here, it's up and down. And of course, the Z is going to be sort of front to back. Okay, so all of those are useful, but the one that I want is in the X. So I've got the symmetry on now, and I've got my square, and of course I can set the size. Maybe I'll go for 2. I'm going to hold Shift and Control, and I want this pretty much close to the middle. Click and drag, but it didn't go all the way around. So I think the best way, if you want to put panel lines or something that go all the way around your object, I'm going to press F1, and that's going to bring up the UVs as well. So this is the UV map. I made a small change, by the way. I put for the end caps, the UVs are lying on top of each other. It's not important for this video. This is the pattern you can see here, and these pieces are the circles there. One of the reasons that we wanted those UVs to be straight is to do stuff like this, and what I'm going to show you in a moment. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the same thing, but on the UVs instead of this. And then I can go from one end to the other, all of it, instead of what is just sort of visible. So I'm going to come over here, and it's trial and error. I'm going to hold Shift and Control, and I don't think that's going to be the right spot. Let me come over here. A little bit more there. We'll try that. Okay, let's see. It's a little further out than I wanted it to be, but it's not bad. And then if you want, you can just undo and do it again. Okay, something like that. And that goes all the way around. Now, I didn't have to be in orthographic for this part. I'm just going to undo that and show you that if I just have that in perspective, you can be viewing it anyway as long as you've got the symmetry on. If I just do it on the UVs, it doesn't matter. There it is. So we've got our black indented line that goes all the way around symmetrically on both sides. Now if I press the tab button and come back here, I can come back to my fill layer like I said before, and I can change the color if I want. I'm going to leave it at black, however. All right, so that is our first thing. Now I'm going to call this lines, and I'm going to make a folder as well. I'm going to drag that in, and I'm going to call this alphas, and then we can do more. So this fill layer with the lines is in there. Now I would like to put some sort of like tick marks going all the way around as well. So I'm going to create another fill layer. We very often use fill layers. Come to the properties, and I'm going to alt click on the height. I only want height. This time I want the height to come out, and I'll bring it up about halfway and we'll try that. So I'm going to paint on here. And so now I need to think about, well, what shape do I want to use? What alpha do I want to use to do this? And I'm going to choose this shape square squeeze, which has a little bit of blur on it. That means it's not going to be such a stark change, all right? And that's going to be a nice effect for us. So I'm choosing that alpha, but really I need to do that actually on my paint layer. So my fill layer has only height. The next step is black mask and then a paint layer, and just get used to that. Now I've still got symmetry on, and that's fine. I'm going to, let's press the tab button to go into full screen and F1 to bring up the UVs as well. Because if I go into orthographic, and you often do that in order to, if you're going to draw right on here. If I do that and I just, okay, I've got that brush there, or that alpha. If I hold Control and Shift, I just get this. I get an indentation, or it's actually coming out. But again, it doesn't go all the way, and that doesn't look like tick marks to me. And so the way we're going to do this is we're going to come into the properties of the paint, and you can see that we've chosen this square rectangle. Let me make sure that I've got that actually there. We've chosen that. You can adjust the hardness. You can adjust some parameters about this. But what I want to do is I want to scroll up and I want to change the spacing. Now look at this preview here. It's a solid line. As I pull this up, see the way it starts to break apart like that? So that each shape square squeeze alpha is like a separate image here. If I then come over here and I hold Shift and Control, and let's have a look at this. Now you can see there are a number of them, and that is affected by the spacing. If I have less spacing, let me make that a little bit bigger too. I will get more of these. If I have a bigger space in between, then there's not as much room to lay these down, and we'll get less of them. So I just got to figure out how many. Let's put it kind of around there. Let's do a test here. Yeah, that's kind of how many I want, and it's going to go on both sides, but it's not all the way. So the solution to this is to press F1 and do it on the UVs. I'm going to go into full screen here and zoom in a little bit. I don't really need to see this fully. In fact, that doesn't even have to be in orthographic. I can. Oh, by the way, a tip is if you're like zoomed in, press F. It sort of refocuses it. I'm just going to put it like that. All right, so let's see. I'm going to try, just got to make sure you can see the top and the bottom. I'm going to try right here. Hold Shift and Control, click. It's on the outside. That's not where I want it. I want it on the inside. So Control Z. Let's try it there. Okay. Now I'm going to do something on purpose just to show you. I'm going to put it there. No, I'm not going to put it there. I'm going to put it there. A little bit more. All right, close enough. So I've got them symmetrical. I've got the spacing that goes all the way around, but I wish I didn't do it there. Now you could just redo this, but I want to show you that you can come back to your paint layer. All right, this is what we just painted, and you can choose the eraser. And when you choose eraser, make sure you choose a hard brush or a hard alpha for this. And you can just come in here. Let's maximize this. I'm on the eraser now. And I can do it from the bottom to the top. Hold Shift and Control and erase like that. I didn't get any. Sometimes you have to just keep moving there. I got some there. And I have those. All right. So I have those little tick marks there. Now again, because it's a fill layer, I can adjust this. Maybe I want them to go in or out or change the color. To make this look a little bit better, perhaps, we'll try this. Okay, it's still a little sharp, all right, even though we use that shape square squeeze. Let's come to the paint layer and let's add a filter now above it so it will affect it below. And I'm going to come to the properties and the filter I'm going to try. Let's try the blur. So let's just watch these and see how it looks as we add this. Here's the blur. Okay, see the way it kind of softens it. Now that's defaulted to 0.5 for the intensity. I'm going to try 0.3 instead. Just a little bit less, and it just makes them look like they stand up a bit more, maybe even 0.35. All right, so we've used alpha so far to create a indented line that's colored, that's symmetrical, that goes all the way around. And we've used alphas to create sort of these radially symmetrical almost dots. I want to do something else. I want to talk to you a little bit about text, because especially if you're doing sci-fi objects, you want to put some text on there. You can either use the text that is in Substance Painter, or you can create your own and save it as an alpha or a stencil. We'll talk about stencils later, and bring that in. So let's just have a quick look at that. And again, I'm going to start with a fill layer, because that will allow me the greatest amount of control. For this text, I want to have color, and I may want to have height. And my suggestion for text is, if you want it sort of pushed into like metal or something like that, just don't go too much. Just a little bit helps with the sort of reflection of light. I'm going to change the base color. I'm going to go with black again. All right. And I'm going to add a black mask and a paint layer. And so we're ready to paint, and then if we mess up, we can just delete that paint layer, or we can add multiple paint layers. Now, for text, this is in the alphas, all right, and I'm going to search for font. That gives you a number of fonts that you can use to type your own words, and it also has some, predetermined words, all right, caution, backward, clear, close, all that. Let's just choose any font, like this Jura one here. If you click on the font or double click it, come to the properties of the paint layer and scroll down, you will see alpha font is called Jura. This is where you type your text under parameters text. So I'm just going to write anything like FX-01. I don't know what that means for something. I want to get out of symmetry, and I'm going to hold Control and right mouse button to make the text a little bit bigger. So we've got this. Now I can type right on here, but I want to change the orientation. So let's go like this. There we go. And I can just type that in. Maybe I'll try bold. So let's switch the type to bold. See what that does. I'm going to put it there. Now this is not symmetrical. And if you do this in symmetry, let's put it on mirror symmetry in the X. Let's see what it looks like. This one is backwards, all right? So we're not going to do that right now. We're going to come over here, and I'm going to put the text there. No, I'm going to put it here. And then you say, oh man, I love my text. I don't want to change that, but it's not where I wanted it to be. Well, let me show you another filter that we can use to play with this. So I don't need that on. I just want to look at this. I'm going to add a filter, and the filter I'm going to add is the transform filter. So remember, this is the X and this is the Y. And here I have offset X, offset Y in this transform filter. So let's try this. Now, it's very sensitive. So if you pull it hard, it's going to move fast. See the way the text is moving in the X direction? Let's try 0.1. No. Let's try 0.02. All right, there it is. Let's try 0.01. That's pretty much in the middle of where I wanted it. And the Y will move it. I'm just going to hold shift. I think it'll move it slower. Up and down the curve. All right, so you can position it. I want the text up there, let's say. So that is using the transform. All right, so we got some text. Let's make sure that we're in perspective. It tends to look a little bit better. Again, because this was a fill layer, I can come back to here and I can adjust how deep I want that in. If I want it to protrude out, something like that. And I can change the color, all of that. Okay. So now we have used alphas for a few different things. That is using the text here. That's, built in. There are ways to bring in your own fonts, by the way. We could talk about that sometime in the future, although I did a video on that. I want to show you one more thing where you bring in your own alpha and it's not working well. Let's create a fill layer and let's do color and height. I'll drop the height just a little bit. I'm going to make this black and I'm going to add a black mask and I'm going to add a paint layer. Yeah, we'll try it like this. And like I said, I want to bring in my own alpha. So down here, this plus button here, import resources, click that, choose add resources, and I'm just going to navigate to a place where I've got something that I'm going to try and use. So as you can see, this image here is a black and white image saved as a PNG. You could use JPEG, but here in this case PNG. But look at the dimensions. It says the dimensions are 550 by 400. A hint or a tip for Substance Painter is to use a square size. Something like 1024 by 1024 is fine. If you use a different dimension, you can get away with stuff like 800 by 800, you know, if they're equal. But 1024 by 1024 is great. But if you use odd ones, it often will cause a problem. But I'll show you how you can fix that. So I'm going to click on that. I'm going to click open. And I'm going to define this. It says it's undefined. There's the name. You want to, it's going to be an alpha. It's a black and white image. We're going to use it as an alpha to affect the height. And it'll have the color we set. Import your resource to, well, if you import it to the current session, that means once you close the file, it will be gone. You can save it with the file, or you can put it in your asset so it's always available. Well, I just want to do this for the video, so I'm going to do that and import. And there it is. It's selected already. I'm going to double click so that it loads it onto my brush here. You can see it there. And I'm going to maximize and turn on orthographic and turn and snap because I want to put it here. Okay, well, you probably realize right away, look at it, it's warped. Not to mention it's rotated the wrong way. So let's get it, well, I want to spend too much time on this part because, let's just bring it back. I'm really going to be showing you how to fix this. So if I was to click that, you can see that I get my image on there. It's got the color. It's nicely indented and parts stick out. That's great. But I'm not happy with the shape. And I think the way that I would go about this, if I had to use this particular alpha and I couldn't create a better one, here's one thing you can do. All right. I'm going to add, instead of a paint layer on here with all the same stuff, I'm going to add a fill layer. I'll come to the properties, and all I've got for this fill layer is this grayscale aside from this stuff here. So I'm going to take my image and I'm going to drag it into the grayscale. And now let me press F1 so you can see the UVs as well. It's there. It's just all over the place. I'm going to hold shift and I'm going to make this smaller. And you can see I get multiple ones of these and it's not in the right position yet. And you may remember we talked about this last time. If I come to the properties here, you see on this UV wrap it says repeat. I'm going to switch this to say none. So now I only have one of those images. And now I can maximize and zoom in here. And I want it on this circle. So I'm just going to pull it down. And now I can squash this a bit so that it becomes circular. Now it looks right side up here, but it doesn't here. And so I'm going to be looking at my object, and I'm going to start rotating until it looks good on my object. I don't care about the UV. So something like that. And then I'm going to try to move this till I get to the roughly the right position. I can scale it and move it. And it's a little bit weird, but you see I've changed the shape of it by bringing it in as a fill layer. So let me go back to perspective, and there it is. All right, and because it was a fill, I can still come back here and I can adjust the various properties of this if I want. Make it go in even more. It might not look that good or protrude out. Yeah, that kind of thing. Okay, so I'm going to leave it at that for now for this video, and we'll come back with the next video and we'll look at a few more things for Substance Painter. Thanks for watching.